And that's what we always say is Andrew is hilarious.
Thank God.
Shabbat shalom, everyone. Right, Rabbi Michael has a new guitar, so forgive us for being a moment or two late. And if you hear him getting out of tune, you just have to go like this and along that.
Then they're all going to be itching there. Yeah.
Exactly.
That is very.
I know Carol Burnett.
Which means I love you.
True.
That's the signal.
All right, well, welcome everyone. We're so glad that you could be here with us as we celebrate Shabbat together. And it's a special night in our family because Parker Gamlin is becoming bar mitzvah tomorrow morning. Mazel tov in advance, Parker. We're so excited for you. So we're gonna start. What are we gonna start with? Do some Ozy. Let's do that. All right, so this is an oldie but a goodie. Not really an oldie. We've only been doing it for a year or two, but we did it for so many weeks that we sort of know it. The words are Ozy v'zimrat ya. Ozy v'zimrat ya. Vayehi li Yeshua. Ozy v'zimrat ya. So we start our services each week by doing our blessings over wine and bread and candles. So tonight we're going to invite up Parker and Mackenzie and Miles and Jonah and Molly. Will you guys come on up and help us? All right, and first, Jonah, our expert. Hold on, what happened to our matches? Are you ready to wield them? Maybe away from your mother. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. Sorry, Parker, will you grab the giant cup there? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pari hagafen.
Amen.
All right, and Miles, do you want to grab the challah? You may need Mackenzie's help with this. Okay, so this is a special challah from Mora Diane, and because it's November, it's pumpkin spice challah. We're very excited. Didn't know there was such a thing. All right, do you remember this blessing? Okay, so we'll all do it together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. All right, now I don't know how you feel about pumpkins, so you can grab some. If you're not sure, Molly is a serious pumpkin fan. Molly, do you want to try? You don't have to, it's okay. Excellent. All right, we can eat more later. Great job, guys. Thank you. Very nice. So every Shabbat we have this tradition that we say that we're welcoming angels into our midst. And so if you want to turn in your prayer books, and this is both for you who are here or if you're watching from home, and I know a lot of people, by the way, have started using their prayer books at home. I'm so glad you do that. Remember that you can always, you can buy a prayer book or borrow one from us if you like, but there's also a free flip book on the website for the CCAR that we have a link to. So, but we're going to turn to page 24 and we're going to welcome these ministering angels into our midst with the words of Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi-Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Boachem Leshalom, Malachei Ashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi-Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bahuni l'shalom, malachei shalom, malachei elyon. Melech malachei amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seidchem l'shalom, malachei shalom, malachei elyon. Melech malachei amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we invite you, if you will, to turn to page 28 and rise if you're able, and we'll join together in the call to worship, the Baruch Hu. You can sing if you know it. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach, HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. HaMevorach, HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows.
Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'ma'ariv aravim. And we join in the words of the Shema on page 34. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Please be seated. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha. V'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavacha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam B'shivtecha b'beitecha, uvlechtecha b'derech, u'shokbecha uvkumecha, u'kshartam le'ot al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha, u'chtaltam al mezuzot beitecha, u'visharecha, leman tizkeru, v'asitem et kol mitzvotai, V'tem kadoshim leloichem, ani Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, lehiot lachem lelohim, ani Adonai Elohechem. On 39. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there's a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there, except by joining hands and marching together and singing the Song of Freedom on page 40. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedor b'kodesh, norah tilot oseh feleh, norah tilot oseh feleh. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedor b'kodesh. Every week, Rabbi Michael and I come to this next prayer, and I try to sneak in a different Hashkivenu, but this is the Rabbi Michael Hashkivenu. So this one's your preferred Hashkivenu. This is just a call, by the way, to any of our songwriters out there. If you want to write a new Hashkivenu, we are in the market for one. But this is a good one, because Hashkivenu, no matter what the tune is always such a beautiful message. It just asks God to spread some sort of shelter of protection of us wherever we go. So the Hebrew is on 42. This one has a few English lines as well. I invite you to sing along, whichever part you'd like. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomrenu l'chaim, ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. Shelter us beneath thy wings, O Adonai. Guard us from all harmful things, O Adonai. Keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake with morning's light. Teach us, God, wrong from right. Amen. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomrenu l'chaim. In just a moment, on page 46, we will join in our tefillah. We remember that tefillah, which means the prayer, has a lot of different names. Sometimes we call it Shmona Esrei, which means 18 blessings, because there's 18 blessings in here. Really, there's 19. We just don't talk about that because it's confusing. Also, though, sometimes we call it the Avots, which means the ancestors. And we do that because in the beginning of the prayer, we praise the God of Abraham and Isaac and of Jacob, of Sarah and Rebekah, Rachel and Leah. And it's fitting then tonight in our Torah portion, and what Parker's going to read tomorrow, we start to hear the story of the last of those patriarchs of Jacob. And when we sing or say this prayer, it's a reminder to us that we just don't say God of all of our ancestors. We say each of them individually by name, reminding us that each of us has our own connection with God, just as the ancestors who came before us did. So when you are connecting to the divine in whatever way that works for you, we'll invite you to rise on page 46. And if you wish to join in these words, feel free to do so. But if you just wish to offer the prayers of your hearts, you can do that as well. Please rise. Adonai sefetai tiftach ufi agita hilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imoteinu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Hayom Gomer חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע. מקלקל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים. סומך נופלים והופך חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה. ונאמן אתה לחיות הקום, ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. Please be seated.
Days pass and years vanish, and we walk sightless among miracles. God, fill our eyes with seeing and our minds with knowing. Let there be moments when your presence, like lightning, illuminates the darkness in which we walk. Help us to see, wherever we gaze, that the bush burns unconsumed, and we, clay touched by God, will reach out for holiness and exclaim in wonder, how filled with awe is this place, and we did not know it. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh.
And we turn now all the way to page 60, and we offer a prayer for peace with the words of Shalom Rav. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim La'olam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim La'olam. Ki ata melech Adon L'chol Shalom. Ki ata melech Adon L'chol Shalom. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim La'olam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim La'olam. B'tov beinecha levarech et amcha Yisrael, bechol עת ובחושך בשלומך. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim La'olam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim La'olam. We're going to turn now really to the middle of our prayer book, to page 253, where we'll offer a prayer for healing. And I know that there are many people who have asked us to offer prayers for them tonight, for them and their loved ones. But if you're here in person tonight and there's someone you're thinking of who could use our healing prayers and you'd like to say their names aloud, I invite you to do so at this time. We're thinking too of Harold Braymeyer. We're thinking of John and Chris Kelly and Anita Mills. We're thinking of Rosie and Spencer. We're thinking of Drew Patchen and his whole family. We're thinking of Kelly, Ella Raber, we're thinking of you, and Aubrey McLean, Jerry Krause, Lacey Weinstein, Arlene Alper. For all of them and for all of us, we sing this healing prayer. Mishaberach avotenu mekor haracha leimotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mekor haracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. Oh, say shalom bimroma. Oh, yeah, say shalom aleinu. Ve'yakol Yisrael ve'imeru. Amen. Oh, say shalom bimrama. Oh, yeah, say shalom aleinu. Ve'yakol Yisrael ve'imeru. Amen. So tomorrow, Parker is going to read from the Torah, and he is going to read the story of Jacob and Esau. Now, he's going to tell you the whole story tomorrow, so you'll have to come back at 11 if you want to hear the whole thing. But I would bet that even if you've never heard of Jacob and Esau before, if I were to tell you that one of them is the good guy and one is the bad guy, does anyone want to guess who the good guy is going to be? The good guy is Esau? Come on, how many little boys do you know named Esau? Probably not a lot, right? Jacob, I know like 50 Jacobs at least, because of course Jacob is the good guy. By the way, Jacob later becomes named Israel, so that should have been your other hints. But Jacob is the good guy. Okay, so Jacob is going to be the good guy. And really Esau, in Jewish tradition, is portrayed as like the worst. I mean, he often is portrayed later in Jewish history as being the embodiment of Rome, which, you know, in Jewish history is like the big historical bad guy for us. So we know that Esau is the bad guy. Did I say that right? You cleared your throat. Anytime there was a history question, I was like, oh, did I say that right? Okay. So, but here's the thing. In the story tomorrow that we'll hear about Jacob and Esau, that's the story of the two of them and their birth and their childhood, it's a little bit hard to see why it is that Esau is the bad guy and Jacob is the good guy. We know that when their mom, Rebecca, was pregnant with them, that they fought a lot in her womb, or that it was a very difficult pregnancy. But when they were born, they're twins, and we're told that Esau comes out first, but Jacob was like actually grabbing onto Esau's leg, like as if he was like fighting with him on the way out. So already it's not a very promising start for Jacob as the hero of our story. And we're told a little bit about how they look. They look very different. Esau is sort of ruddy and hairy, and Jacob is, he's referred to as Tom, which you may know from the Passover story, one of the 4 sons, the simple son, that's Jacob, both in his sort of appearance and his attitude. Also doesn't seem like he's being set out to be the hero. And then there's 2 stories about their childhood. The first one says that one day Esau's out and about, he comes home and he is just really tired and hungry, and so Jacob has been cooking something and tricks Esau into giving him his birthright just for that pot of stew. Which, okay, maybe makes Esau sound a little bit like he's kind of a dummy, but the truth is, if you've ever been around teenage boys, you know that they get hungry, and it makes sense that maybe one of them would have made a mistake for that reason. And then later on, when they're older, it's time for them to get a blessing from their father. Esau is supposed to get his first, but Jacob tricks his dad into giving him Esau's blessing. So in one story after another, it seems as if Jacob is not really the good guy. It seems as if Esau is kind of just an innocent bystander or even a victim. But since we know the Jewish tradition is going to say that Jacob is the good guy, there has to be some teaching about why that happens. And you all know that in Jewish tradition, if something doesn't make sense, there's probably a midrash that explains it. And there's lots of midrashim that explain just what it was that made Jacob such a good guy and Esau such a bad guy. One teaching says that when they were fighting in Rebekah's womb, that what they were actually fighting about is that each time they would pass by a house of worship where they were worshiping idols, Esau wanted to go so badly that he would like claw to get out of the womb, which is gross and disturbing, right? But so he really wanted to go and worship those idols even before he was born. There's another story that says that the way that Esau would talk, that he would talk especially to his dad, and he'd be like, "Gosh, Dad, isn't giving tzedakah great? Should I be giving more tzedakah? Because I'd like to," right? Like he would talk and like, I was trying to think of what a modern day version of Eddie Haskell is. I never even watched that show, but it's Eddie Haskell, right? I mean, so he was really just trying to, be a little bit of a sycophant every time that it came to his dad and really wanted to butter him up. But the best story of all is about the one that happened on the day that he's cooking that stew, or that Jacob is cooking the stew and tricks Esau into eating it. Now, the Torah text just says that Esau was really, that he was kind of exhausted. But the Talmud says, you know why he was so exhausted and so hungry? Because Esau had had a very busy day that morning. Already that morning, he had spurned his birthright. He had denied God's power. He had actually denied God's existence altogether. He dishonored a betrothed maiden, and he murdered someone. All in one morning. So he was exhausted and really hungry, and that's why he needed to have that bowl of soup so bad. But you can tell even with the ridiculousness of that story, I mean, who could do all of that in one morning, right? That clearly Jewish tradition is trying to make Esau out to be a very bad guy. So the question then is, why? Why does Jewish tradition feel the need to work so hard to make sure that we know that Jacob is the good guy and Esau is the villain? So one answer could simply be that we know the history is written by the winners, right? That it makes sense that we knew that Jacob was going to be our ancestor. We know how the story ends. And so it made a lot more sense to sort of go back in Jewish tradition and add in these stories that made it clear that Esau wasn't just sort of like a doofus, like he was aggressive and mean and violent and all of this. That sort of makes us look better in the end. And we certainly know, even in American society today, we're going back and seeing maybe how we might have written history a little bit different, and we have to go back and understand what really happened, which of course you're never going to know in the Torah. So maybe it's that history is written by the winners. It could also be, oops, sorry, I lost my train of thought just for a sec. Sorry, I'm a little under the weather and the brain isn't fully working right now. Well, I know, what did we talk about today? Oh, I remember why. Rabbi Michael and I talked about this for like 2 hours this morning. So good. Thank you for having my back. Okay, the other reason why is because sometimes it feels awesome to hate people. Which I know is also a terrible thing to say, right? but sometimes it helps us to have a villain in our life or someone to blame. And we know that we see this in so many different environments. You see it sometimes in a workplace. You certainly see it in the government. That sometimes if there is someone who is a bad guy or someone who you didn't vote for or who you are against, that rather than just say, oh, I don't like their policies, that it's much easier to say, yeah, actually they did this and they did that and I don't like their hair and I don't like the way they look, right? Like it's much easier to try and find things that make that bad guy really a bad guy. And we've seen this sadly in our own history. Right? Even if you think about all of the different reasons that the Holocaust happened, one of them was because after the Weimar Republic, it was really helpful to have someone to blame for everything. If you can have someone to blame for all the things that go wrong, if you can have someone be the villain, it can sometimes make you feel a lot better. But here's the thing, and it's funny, when Rabbi Michael and I were talking about this morning, I said, I still don't think either of those answers is right. There's got to be a better answer for why it is that Jewish tradition says Esau is the bad guy. And he reminded me of an experience that we had years ago. I don't even remember how many years it was, but we were in Tzfat. And we were in Tzfat for Shabbat. Tzfat is a city in Israel in the north. And we went to a Shabbat service at a place called the House of Love and Prayer that is as awesome as it sounds. And it's sort of just like outside on someone's rooftop, and they have a mechitza because it's Orthodox, but the mechitza was just like a clothesline that they just sort of strung up a sheet there, and it was so amazing. And the rabbi gets up to talk, and he's speaking part in English, part in Hebrew, and part in Russian. So I understood maybe like a quarter of it. Rabbi Michael got a lot more than I did out of it. But afterwards, we pieced together what he said, and he was talking about this parsha. And what he said that Rabbi Michael reminded me of this morning was that the reason that the story of Jacob and Esau is so important in Jewish tradition is because we have to know that Jacob and Esau, they're just two sides of one coin. They are twins. And in so many ways, it's not that they're so different, it's that each of them, we have them within us. That there's always a little bit of Jacob and a little bit of Esau. And so when we try in some way to vilify Esau, to say he's the bad guy, he did everything wrong, remembering that it's Jacob and Esau should allow us to say, wait, maybe a little bit of that badness is in me too. It keeps us from truly vilifying the other because we realize that Esau, as the bad guy, is also within ourselves. And maybe that's the most important lesson to come out of it. Because no matter what, it's always easy to find a bad guy, and there were certainly many bad guys in the Torah that they could choose from. They could have done Cain. He was the first murderer, right? Like there's lots of bad guys in the Torah, but Esau becomes the paradigm for the villain in Jewish tradition to remind us that maybe there are no true villains. That maybe always within us, there's a little bit of Jacob and a little bit of Esau. So before we go off and we try to say that someone is to blame, that someone is always the bad guy, we need to make sure we see the humanity that's in them because it's also within ourselves. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thanks for your patience with my brain. So we're going to turn it now to 282, and I'll ask you, if you will, to please rise for the words of the Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabech l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
On page 287, excuse me.
V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad.
So even though we come together on Shabbat for a time of joy, we also know that we're here to honor those losses in our lives. And in particular, we recall with love the names of those taken from us in recent days. And our hearts go out to their families in sympathy as we recall their names: Barbara Altman, Maxine Gelber, Stanley Hahn, Norma Cohn-Scallett. We now recall the names of those, the anniversary of whose death occurs on this Shabbat, and whose names have been inscribed in the archives of our congregation or on the wall of honor for perpetual memorial: Benjamin Bernard, David Bloomberg, Kate Brick, Samuel Broderson, Abraham Brown, Andrea Kosberg Carlson, Harry Ephron, Jack Stanley Fishman, Corinne Fuller Glazer, Charles Saul Glassman, Simeon Golem, Carol Adrian Grady, Melville Griebel, Rose Gross, Barbara Gunther, Adele Obermeyer Hirschberg, Bruno Hollander, Lily Holtzman, Susan Jacobs, Rennie Joachimstahl, Lina Kahn, Edward Koshner, Sylvia Levinson, Jacob Loth, Irene Lowy, Lillian Euster Manny, Betty Jane Mitchell, Gerald Rosenblum, Ronald Sachs, Adolph Samuel, Herman Shermer, Elsie Shukar, Miriam L. Schwartz, Solomon Siegel, Mary Siegfried, Faye Silverman, Mignon Seitman, Bessie Babe Sline, Florence Sofier, Milton Sussman, Alfred Vorhaus, Henry Weil, Lily Winner, Alvin A. Wolf, Herman S. Wolfheim Sr., and Ida Zelson. With those names and the names we keep in our hearts, we turn to the words of the Mourner's Kaddish on 294. Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, ba'alma divrach yirteh v'yamlich malchuteh, b'chayachon uvyomechon uv'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv emru amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah mevarach le'alam omei omaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shmei dekudusha b'richu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, da'amiran ba'alma v'emru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'emru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'emru amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn and comfort all who are bereaved. And we say, amen.
Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'emru amen.
So over COVID, we got in the habit of singing some sort of popular song, not popular, some sort of secular song at the end of services. And for the most part, we have stopped. But Parker, since it's your bar mitzvah, we thought we should sing one that made us think of you.
We felt very, very powerful. Return to tradition and something new. Oh.
Feel free to sing along if you'd like to.
Is this the little girl I carry? Is this the little boy at play? I don't remember growing older. When did they?
You gonna sing?
Okay. Sunrise.
Wait,
sorry.
There's more.
When did she get to be a beauty? When did he grow to be so tall? Wasn't it yesterday? When they
Sunrise, sunset, sunrise, sunset, swiftly flow the days. Seedling
She let you know.
All the time, man. And she gets violent.
They are not. Those are like the coolest.
Those are they're panther mitts.
Wow.
They're fabulous.
Thank you so much. It's just a goal, but yeah. Thank you, Carla. Thank you. Hi. Yes. I figured as much. I remember. I could tell from your picture.
No way. It's actually
No,
that's intense. All right, let's try.
It is good.
Do I want it? That's not bad.
It's good.
That's not bad. I don't know if I put it in the sandwich. That's like 8 minutes.
Yeah, you're also the oldest one. I got like 3 years. No, you got like 6 years. It's too much Oh. can take her back.
That's the best seat to have. All right, let's do it again tomorrow.
Yeah.